Okay, so let us finish chapter 6 of the Bhagavad Gita. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshuramilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Tatati Swapadantikam Manchakalpa Tarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhyevacha Utitan Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaura Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Are you still studying Ishopanishad or is that finished now?
We just finished mantra 5, Prabhuji.
Oh, you have a long way to go.
Yes.
Okay. I thought you were done by now. Okay. All right, so we are on verse 33. And we're going to hear a lot about the mind. And then after we're done hearing about the mind, we're going to hear about the fate of yogis who don't finish in one lifetime. So Krishna has just explained the path of Jnana Yoga, Ashtanga Yoga, and the goal of it, seeing Krishna everywhere. For one who sees me everywhere and sees everything in me, I am never lost, nor is he ever lost to me. And then Arjuna asks the question. So we're on verse 33. Arjuna Uvacha, Yo Yam Yogas Tvaya Prokta, Samyena Madhusudana, Etasyaham Napasyami, Chanchalavat Stitim Stiram. Arjuna said, O Madhusudana, the system of yoga which you have summarized appears impractical and unendurable to me, for the mind is restless and unsteady. Prabhupada writes in the purport that the system of mysticism described by Lord Krishna to Arjuna, beginning with the word Suchal Deshe and ending with Yogi Parama, is here being rejected by Arjuna out of a feeling of inability. I can't do it, he said. It's not possible for an ordinary man to leave home and go to a secluded place in the mountains or jungles to practice yoga in the age of Kali. In the present age is characterized by a bitter struggle for a short duration, for a life of a short duration. And people are not serious about self-realization, even by simple practical means. And what to speak of this difficult yoga system, which regulates the mode of living, the manner of sitting, the selection of a place, the detachment of the mind from material engagements. A little further, Prabhupada writes, therefore, the system must be considered generally impossible in the age of Kali. Of course, it may be possible for some very few rare men, but for people in general, it is an impossible proposal. So, Prabhupada, so the point, and we made this point last week, to do yoga in big cities, it can be, Prabhupada, it can be okay for your health, but as a process of spiritual realization, it's not practical. It's not practical. It's just not, yeah. Because, I mean, is Arjuna going to be able to maintain equal vision on the battlefield of Kurukshetra? Right? He said in text 29, observes me in all beings and also sees every being in me. And in text 30, sees me everywhere and sees everything in me when he's about to, engage in a battle. Can he really see Yudhishthira Maharaj and Duryodhana equally? So Arjuna is like, he's presenting his doubts to Krishna, frankly, telling him it's that kind of vision is not possible. How's he going to carry out his duty of fighting and see friends and enemies equally? So Arjuna continues pointing this out. Chanchalam himana Krishna pramati bhalavam dridham tasyaham nigraham manye vayor eva suduskaram. The mind is restless, turbulent. Anyone ever have this experience? Restless, turbulent, obstinate, and very strong, O Krishna. And to subdue it, I think, is more difficult than controlling the wind. And try to control the wind, right? Forget it. It's impossible to control the wind. And Prabhupada writes about the intelligence. He says that this is after the Sanskrit there. Intelligence is supposed to direct the mind, but the mind is so strong and obstinate that it often overcomes even one's intelligence, as an acute infection may surpass the efficacy of medicine. Such a strong mind is supposed to be controlled by the practice of yoga, but such yoga is never practical for a worldly person like Arjuna. Like we just said, is he going to see Duryodhana and Yudhisthira equally? And what can we say about modern man? The simile used here is appropriate. One cannot capture the blowing wind, and it is even more difficult to capture the turbulent mind. And Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, he says something interesting. He says that the intelligence can be compared to a sharp needle, right? And even the very sharp needle of the intelligence cannot pierce the strong mind any more than a needle can pierce iron, right? Can you imagine trying to pierce, take, like a needle that you may use for sewing, and you try to pierce a solid iron? It's not going to happen, right? So it's not so easy. Every one of us had the experience. We know our intelligence is telling us something we should not do. And our mind says, our mind can come up with so many good excuses. It's so expert. It's just like you try to go on a diet and you say, okay, well, I'll start tomorrow, right? Or I've been so good all week, I can have these 3 jalebis today. I've been so good. So, and it just can come up with so many different rationalizations. I think I showed you this before, right? But, anyone know how to spell rationalize? No? Nobody knows how to spell it?
I think you mentioned it earlier, something about LIES.
Yeah, rationalize. Yeah. So if our mind comes up with that. So here in the Sanskrit, Prabhupada compares it right to a chronic disease that is not responding to medicine. So the mind is pramati, always churning, balavat, unbreakable, and dridham, obstinate. Its business, you ever have this one, is to accept a thing and then reject the same thing a moment later. And it may even quickly accept the same thing again. So that's what we're up against. So in 33 and 34, Arjuna is responding to Krishna's question, why don't you just control your mind with your intelligence? He's saying it's not possible. So now we're going to hear Krishna's answer in 35. Shri Bhagavan Uvacha Ashangshayam Mahabaho Mano Durni Graham Chalam Abhyasena Tukunteya Vairagyena Chagriyate. Lord Shri Krishna said, O mighty armed son of Kunti, it is undoubtedly very difficult to curb the restless mind, but it is possible by suitable practice and by detachment, by abhyas and vairagya. And here's a beautiful, now Prabhupada gives his secret. about 5 sentences down. The first and foremost of such devotional engagements is hearing about Krishna. Oh, no, I'll read this sentence before that. By the practice of Krishna consciousness, however, one engages in 9 types of devotional service. This is a way to control the mind. First and foremost of such devotional engagements is hearing about Krishna. This is a very powerful transcendental method for purging the mind of all misgivings. The more one hears about Krishna, the more one becomes enlightened and detached from everything that draws the mind away from Krishna. By detaching the mind from activities not devoted to the Lord, one can very easily learn Vairagya. Vairagya means detachment from matter and engagement of the mind in spirit. Impersonal spiritual detachment is more difficult than attaching the mind to the activities of Krishna. And Prabhupada said this is practical because by hearing about Krishna, one becomes automatically attached to the Supreme Spirit. And then Prabhupada, at the second to last sentence in the purport, hearing of the transcendental activities of Lord Krishna is therefore expert treatment for the mad mind. And eating the foodstuff offered to Krishna is the appropriate diet for the suffering patient. How nice. So the example of that Prabhupada gave earlier, the patient not responding to the disease. But elsewhere it is said that even when a disease is advanced, if a patient places themselves under the care of an expert doctor, like the spiritual master, and then takes regular treatment, hearing and chanting about Krishna, it will be effective. So it is possible, it's just not easy. And how to do that is explained in the next verse. Asamyata mana yogo dushprapa iti me mati. Vas yat mana tu yatata shaktov up tum upayataha. For one whose mind is unbridled, self-realization is difficult work, but he whose mind is controlled and who strives by appropriate means is assured of success. That is my opinion. Purport. The Supreme Personality of Godhead declares that one who does not accept the proper treatment to detach the mind from material engagement can hardly achieve success in self-realization. Trying to practice yoga while engaging the mind in material enjoyment is like trying to ignite a fire while pouring water on it. Yoga practice without mental control is a waste of time. Such a show of yoga may be materially lucrative, but it is useless as far as spiritual realization is concerned. Therefore, one must control the mind by engaging it constantly in the transcendental loving service of the Lord. So this is our challenge. No one said it was going to be easy. In all the processes that we've heard so far, Nishkam Karma Yoga, Jnana Yoga, Ashtanga Yoga, and of course Bhakti, we need to control the mind by Abhyasa and Vairagya. And it's not an easy thing to do. But this is our challenge. And it is easy to do if we can just pick up our beads, open the Gita, open the Bhagavatam, create a habit of good habits. Getting up early, going to the temple or worshiping the deity at home, offering our food, and taking shelter when our mind is going nuts. Then that can save us. And the way to take shelter basically is we heard hearing about Krishna and chanting Krishna's names. Because as great and as strong as Maya is, Krishna is stronger. And if we take shelter of Krishna, he will help us. So that is that section on the mind. What questions, comments, thoughts do you have?
So Prabhuji, the two questions that I have. One is in the purport itself, the very last sentence
Which purport?
of 6.36.
Okay.
The very last sentence that Prabhupada writes, that a Krishna conscious person easily achieves the result of yoga practice without separate endeavor, but a yoga practitioner cannot achieve success without becoming Krishna conscious.
Mhm.
So, is this a contradiction? The last piece, the last half of the sentence, is that a contradiction of what Lord Krishna is saying in this chapter?
No, because look at the last verse. Last yogi namapi sarvesham vartatenantaratmana. That's the but a yogi practitioner cannot achieve success. Well, that's also, yes, so that's one point, that the real yogi is the bhakti yogi.
Yes.
Ultimately. Additionally, it is said that and to achieve success in karma, gyan, or yoga, you need some bhakti, meaning you need some help from Krishna. Okay.
Okay.
But bhakti is independent. You don't need any karma, any gyan, any yoga to perform, to succeed in bhakti. Okay. And the first part of the sentence, a Krishna conscious person can easily achieve the results of yoga practice without separate endeavor. That's because he's not talking about, getting, doing a perfect downward dog, or, the various Ashtanga yoga practices. It means that the goal, as we heard in like verse 35 and 36, I believe, is to understand the super soul and get super soul realization. So a devotee gets super soul realization plus a lot more. Other questions, comments, thoughts?
Sorry. Prabhu,
No,
my
please go ahead.
daughter-
I'll ask my second question later. If that's okay. Please go.
Go ahead. Krishna.
Prabhu,
Yes.
my doubt is, will not this yoga practice ultimately lead one to the bhakti yoga, the Krishna consciousness? Because
Will other yoga practices lead to Krishna consciousness? Basically, you get Krishna consciousness by sadhu sangha, by coming in touch with a devotee. And that's why Prabhupada emphasized so much about book distribution, Harinam Sankirtan, sharing Krishna consciousness with others, because that's the way you come in touch with Krishna in some way or other. It's not necessarily, there is the yoga ladder, which we studied, right? But to get to bhakti, you need to come in touch with Krishna somehow. And usually you come in touch with Krishna through one of Krishna's devotees. Or through, if you're fortunate enough to have parents who are, that some way, somehow or other, coming in touch with, if you want to get technical, it's the Madhyama Adhikari, if you remember that from Nectar of Devotion, who's a preacher who spreads Krishna consciousness. So I was just working in a law firm, but one of the clerks was kind enough to tell me about Krishna. Is that all right, Prabhu?
But Prabhu,
In other words, bhakti attracts bhakti.
Yes.
So we need to come in touch with bhakti somehow. It's not that by practicing jnana yoga, you're automatically going to become a bhakta. You still need that contact. Although Krishna says at the end, Bahunam janamam ante jnanavamam prapadyante vasudeva sarvamiti samahatma sudurlabha. But does anyone know what verse that is? That's 7:19, I believe.
7:19, yes, Prabhu.
Is it? 7:19. Yes. After many, many births and deaths, he who is actually in knowledge surrenders unto me, knowing me to be the cause of all causes and all that is. Such a great soul is very rare. So yes, anyway, it's mainly through the association somehow or other with Krishna, and Krishna means his devotees. Is that okay?
Fine, fine. But
Yes.
Prabhu, in that case, what will ultimately the yogi achieve by controlling his senses, by controlling his mind? And what will he achieve?
He can get super soul realization, like in text 35 of this chapter. Is it 35? Wait a second, I'm getting my numbers all confused now. Not 35, no. 30, I think it is. For one who sees me everywhere and sees everything in me, I am never lost, nor is he ever lost to me. So that's explaining super soul realization. Such a yogi, and then 31, such a yogi who engages in the worshipful service of the super soul, knowing that I and the super soul within all creatures are one, remains always in me in all circumstances. So then after super soul realization, if they come in touch with Krishna consciousness, they see that Krishna is the source of the super soul.
Okay.
Yes, my other question, Prabhu, is here while Prabhupada is writing that one can control easily one's mind if we're practicing Krishna consciousness. Of course, the reality may be a little bit different. Our experience may be a little different. Is that always due to our sadhana, or is it also due to lack of faith?
Wait, say the question again. I'm sorry, I didn't totally catch it.
The question is, while Prabhupada is writing in the purport that it is easy to control the mind if one practices Krishna consciousness,
yeah,
our experience may not support that statement. And my question was, is that because of poor sadhana, or is it also due to lack of faith?
It also may be due to definition of terms.
Mm-hmm.
What does Prabhupada mean by easily?
Mm.
Easily can be a relative term, a comparative term.
Yes.
So compared to going into the Himalayas,
Correct.
and eating roots, and being alone, and tolerating the heat, tolerating the cold, this is a lot easier than that.
Mm.
Okay, but to fix the mind on the holy name and to take shelter of the Bhagavatam, not so easy.
Mm.
Right? I mean, but compared to what the yogis do, really easy. Compared to what the Gyanis try to do by just saying aham brahmasmi, very easy. Because what are we doing? Kirtan, very nice. Nice prasadam. Nice pastimes in the Bhagavatam. Nice devotee association. Beautiful deities. It's actually not so bad, is it?
Mm.
Now, what you're kind of saying is Maya is not so weak.
Yes.
And so that's another thing. But the Krishna conscious process, sometimes Prabhupada would say it's simply singing, dancing, and feasting. Right? We know that there's more to it, even Bhakti Shastri. But but when you think about it, if we're in the right consciousness, they're all enjoyable. Chanting, taking prasadams, devotee association, seeing the deities.
So the most important thing for practitioners is to remember not to give up the treatment. Yeah.
Right.
Yes.
Exactly.
That's the most important thing. Prabhuji, there's a question in the chat.
Okay. Why did Krishna keep Bhakti Yoga so secret? Well, Lord Chaitanya didn't. He distributed it widely, but it's just like, sometimes it's explained, it's just like you wouldn't go up to a total stranger and tell them your deepest, darkest secrets, or how you or your association with your spouse or something like that, something that's very, very intimate and personal. So but that is one definition. But is it that secret? We're distributing millions and millions of Bhagavad Gitas. Lord Chaitanya, personally came to set an example of how to give bhakti, and you'll find some parts of bhakti in other religious traditions. Right? This was, Rupa Goswami's genius, that he showed us the difference between karma, gyan, and bhakti, and you can apply that to pretty much every faith. Christianity, Islam, they have some bhakti in it, they have some karma in it, they have some gyan in it. And also Hinduism has karma, gyan, and bhakti, right? But you'll, you can find people practicing bhakti in other religions. Now, they don't have the kind of literature we have, like the Bhagavatam and things, but they do understand that devotion is, as Prabhupada was asked about different philosophers, who not non-devotee philosophers, not non-ISKCON, just like, Freud or Jung or whatever, whoever. And are they Krishna conscious? And Prabhupada said their sincerity is their Krishna consciousness. So a person who's sincerely endeavoring to serve God is practicing some bhakti. Okay, now, what I'm going to do now with the Mataji is we're not going to do the overview this week. We can do it next week, though. Okay, I'm going to try something different. Well, yeah, I was thinking to put you all in groups for a minute or two. Have you done that before? Is that a problem, technology-wise? You just have to click on it when it says you want to join this group.
Yes, we did that during Ishopanishad class, so I think we are good.
Oh, okay. Oh, okay. She's way ahead of me. So let's see, let's make 10 groups. So groups of 3. I'm just going to do it automatically. So what I want you to discuss is what works for you in controlling your mind. When your mind goes nuts, so to speak, or goes here and there, what has you found successful? Okay, that's the question that I want you to talk about. Okay, please join your group. You can speak in whatever language you want.
Discuss with Vishnu Mataji. Yeah, actually, whenever just getting the mind distractions and all, so what I'm doing, that I'm just trying to get that association with the like-minded people.
Okay, association, very good.
Yeah, so like-minded, when we are just stand with the like-minded people, maybe our conscious will be, we could control that way, Prabhu. That is what we discussed. And Mataji
Very
told
nice.
that, yes, Hare Krishna.
Thank you. Others?
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji, Narasimha. Prabhuji, just wanted to mention the points which we discussed. So, I was in the group with, His Grace Sarvapan Prabhuji and Abhaya Mataji. So we discussed some points. So first thing Prabhuji mentioned that we need, when we engage ourselves in the service, so there is very little time to think about various other things, not giving an opportunity to the mind, and taking association of the Vaishnavas and strong morning sadhana, including Mangalarti, And one more very nice thing Prabhuji mentioned, that was listing down the points which is causing disturbance to the mind. Like today, these are the things which disturb me, and this is how I dealt with it. And one more nice point was that listing down how we should be, what we should be doing, so that we can easily come out of it. So yes, Prabhuji, these were a few points which we discussed.
Very nice, thank you.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Dandavat
Yes.
Pranam. In our group, most of them accepted that it is difficult. Firstly, we accepted and surrendered and said that it is very difficult. Thoughts keep pouring, ideas keep coming, and primarily this happens in our chanting time. To most of the time, we try to eliminate that control of the mind, but we then surrender to the mind. But whenever we take help of remember previous acharyas, what they have told our Maharajas, what they have told how to eliminate these thoughts, or even taking help of Tulsi Maharani or begging for mercy, that helps us to kind of come back. And most of the time it is a chanting which gives the trouble around that time. Thank you.
Wonderful, thank you. Yes, it's not easy to control the mind, but it's required. Shall we carry on? Unless someone else would like to share. I didn't mean to cut you off.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji, Dandavat Pranam. I was with Uma Mataji and Vandana Mataji, and we shared that chanting helps a lot to control the mind. And when my mind is disturbed, one more point is that if we have the deities, if we go in front of the deities and share our thoughts, then also we'll become very calm. And sometimes we also get response indirectly. And yes, hearing Srila Prabhupada like this, one Uma Mataji said that sometimes when she is disturbed, she'll just randomly open Bhagavad Gita and she finds the solution through that.
Yes, amazing how that works. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, let's carry on. So we're on verse 30. We're switching topics now, and Arjuna is going to ask an important question. Arjuna Uvacha Ayati Shadhayo Peto Yogach Chalita Manasaha Apraptya Yoga Samsiddhim Kam Gatim Krishna Gachati. Arjuna said, "O Krishna, what is the destination of the unsuccessful transcendentalist, who in the beginning takes to the process of self-realization with faith, but who later desists due to worldly mindedness and thus does not attain perfection in mysticism?" What happens if we don't get it all done? Towards the end of the purport, Prabhupada writes, "Therefore, despite constant endeavor, one may fail for many reasons. First of all, one may not be sufficiently serious about following the process. To pursue the transcendental path is more or less to declare war on the illusory energy. Consequently, whenever a person tries to escape the clutches of the illusory energy, she tries to defeat the practitioner by various allurements. A conditioned soul is already allured by the modes of material energy, and there is every chance of being allured again, even while performing transcendental disciplines. This is called Yojach Chalati Manasa, deviation from the transcendental path. Arjuna is inquisitive to know the result of deviation from the path, so we can get deviated. For you, you're all on this phone call every week, so this Zoom call, so you're not giving in. Even if you sometimes have some problems, you're still taking shelter of the Bhagavad Gita, so you're in good shape. You're in good, very good. So Arjuna wants to know what happens if a person isn't successful. They may have faith, they may practice, they're not, cheaters or anything, but somehow the mind gets deviated. So what happens? And Arjuna is going to clarify his question more in the next verse. Kachin nobhaya vibrastas chinambra eva nashyati apraptishto mahabaho vimuto brahmanapati. Almighty Arm Krishna, does not such a person who is bewildered from the path of transcendence fall away from both spiritual and material success and thus perish like a riven cloud with no position in any sphere? So what happens if we're neither a materialist or a spiritualist? We've taken up some spiritual practices, and we are yet we're not being fully successful. Do they have no position? Is it like a small cloud that breaks off from a big cloud and then just disappears? And then Arjuna finishes his questions. Etad me samshayam Krishna chetum arhas yasheshataha tvad anya samshayash yasya chaitana hu papadyate. This is my doubt, O Krishna, and I ask you to dispel it completely. But for you, no one is to be found who can destroy this doubt. So Krishna is the only one who can destroy Arjuna's doubts, because Krishna knows past, present, and future. Prabhupada writes in the purport in the beginning of the Bhagavad Gita, the Lord said that all living entities existed individually in the past, they exist now in the present, and they continue to retain individual identity in the future, even after liberation from material entanglement. Now Arjuna wants to know of the future of the unsuccessful transcendentalists. So before it was, the future after people die. Now it's the future of the unsuccessful transcendentalists. Now Krishna is going to reply. Shri Bhagavan Uvacha Partha Naiveha Nam Mutra Vinashash Tasya Vidyate Nahi Kalyana Krit Kaschin Durgatim Tata Gachati. So Krishna doesn't say, yeah, Arjuna, you're right. It's, he says, the Supreme Personality of God had said, O son of Prita, a transcendentalist engaged in auspicious activities does not meet with destruction, either in this world or in the spiritual world. One who does good, my friend, is never overcome by evil. And in the second half of the first paragraph, Prabhupada writes, it is enjoined in the scriptures that one has to suffer the reaction for not executing prescribed duties. Therefore, one who fails to discharge transcendental activities properly becomes subject to these reactions. The Bhagavatam, in the verse that quoted above, assures the unsuccessful transcendentalists that there need be no worries. Even though he may be subjected to the reaction for not perfectly executing prescribed duties, he is still not a loser, because auspicious Krishna consciousness is never forgotten, and one so engaged will continue to be so even if he is low-born in his next life. On the other hand, one who simply follows strictly the prescribed duties need not necessarily attain auspicious results if he is lacking in Krishna consciousness. The purport may be understood as follows. Humanity may be divided into two sections, namely the regulated and the unregulated. Those who are engaged simply in bestial sense gratification without knowledge of their next life or spiritual salvation belong to the non-regulated section. And those who follow the principles of prescribed duties in the scriptures are classified among the regulated. The non-regulated section, both civilized and non-civilized, educated and non-educated, strong and weak, are full of animal propensities. Their activities are never auspicious because while enjoying the animal propensities of eating, sleeping, defending, and mating, they perpetually remain in material existence, which is always miserable. On the other hand, those who are regulated by scriptural injunctions and who rise gradually to Krishna consciousness certainly progress in life. So, Krishna is saying, Kalyana Krit, one engaged in auspicious activities. This refers also to, Krishna consciousness. So Arjuna should not be worried. Krishna is using the word tata, my friend. Krishna is showing Arjuna some special affection, addressing him as a loving father addresses a son, or as a guru addresses an intimate disciple. So after kind of taking away Arjuna's fears, Krishna talks about what actually happens to these people. Praptya punya kritam lokan usit va shashvati samaha. Suchinam shimatam gehe yogo brashto vijayate. The unsuccessful yogi, after many, many years of enjoyment on the planets of the pious living entities, is born into a family of righteous people or into a family of rich aristocracy. So a rich person or a Brahminical person. The next verse says, Ataba yoginam eva kule bhavati dimatam etad di dur labha taram loke janma yad idrisham. Or if so, that was the people who are have a short practice of yoga. They either are born in a Brahmin family or in a well-to-do family. But one who had practiced yoga a long time, they're born into a family of transcendentalists, who are surely great in wisdom. Certainly such a birth is rare in this world. Prabhupada writes, fortunately, both our spiritual man, Prabhupada talks about himself, Om Vishnupad Sri Srimad Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj, and our humble self had the opportunity to take birth in such families by the grace of the Lord, and both of us were trained in the devotional service of the Lord from the very beginning of our lives. So there's these two categories, right? Fallen short practice, fallen long practice. First, we hear about the short practice. They go to the heavenly planets. And after prolonged life, there they come back down here into birth in Suchinam Shinmatam, either Suchinam or Shinmatam. And then in 42, we heard that, because this one in 42, it's far better and far rare. It happens when there's a deep mental samskar, impression, developed by serious practice. And Prabhupada, very humbly talks about himself in the purport. And then further describing this yogi after a long practice, tatratam buddhisam yogam labhate pora dehikam yatate cha tato bhuya sansidhau kurunandana. On taking such a birth, he revives the divine consciousness of his previous life, and he again tries to make further progress in order to achieve complete success, O son of Kuru. So spiritual advancement is never lost. Krishna had already said this in chapter 2, verse 40. There's no loss or diminution in this practice. And the yogi just begins where he or she left in their last life. Judd Bharat was a great example of this principle, right? So this is explained a little further in the next verse. Purvab yasena te naiva priyate yavasopi saha jigyasar api yogasya shabda brahma tivartate. By virtue of the divine consciousness of his previous life, he automatically becomes attracted to the yogic principles even without seeking them. Such an inquisitive transcendentalist stands always above the ritualistic principles of the scriptures. So, because of his purvabhyasa, his previous practice, he's automatically attracted. Riyate Yavasha. And he's always above the ritualistic principles of the scriptures. That refers to the karmakanda rituals that lead to material enjoyment. He or she is attracted to a real spiritual life. And I think you may see people like this. They come to the temple, they come to a bhakti vriksha, and they just take to Krishna consciousness right away. It's amazing. That's likely because it's not their first time in touch with Krishna consciousness. So Krishna ends this about the destination of the yogi in the next verse 45. Prayatnad yatamanastu yogi samshudha kilbisa aneka jnana samsiddhas tato yati param gatim. And when the yogi engages himself with sincere endeavor in making further progress, being washed of all contaminations, and ultimately achieving perfection after many, many births of practice, he attains the supreme goal. So to become successful, the yoga brashta, the fallen yogi, has to work hard. That the one fallen after short practice has to work harder than the one who's practiced for a long time. But it's possible, and Krishna is saying that. So before the last two verses, any questions, comments on this whole point about the destination of an unsuccessful yogi?
Prabhuji, I have a question on Shloka 40.
40.
40, yes. The actual translation of the shloka itself, where the Lord is saying that a transcendentalist engaged in auspicious activities does not meet with destruction either in this world or in the spiritual world. So what is the context of the spiritual world? Is Lord Krishna talking about this metaphysically, or is it actual a physical realm difference between the material world and the spiritual world? And
Is there
why,
a difference?
yeah, and why is he talking about the spiritual world at all in this context? I know Arjuna has asked about spirituality a little bit earlier, but I wasn't able to understand this particular reference by the Lord to the spiritual world here.
Yeah, I'm not, let me see. Well, obviously he doesn't meet with destruction in the spiritual world because he's attained a body of Satchit Ananda. So, so there's no destruction. There's clearly no destruction in the spiritual world.
Right.
And if he goes there, then there's no. I mean, even in the material world, because his bhakti is not destroyed. Not that his body will. Everyone's body will be destroyed at one point or another. But the main point is that one who does good is never overcome by evil. So if you do something good, you won't meet with you won't lose your opportunity to go to the spiritual world, and you won't lose whatever progress you've made while here in this world. But the spiritual world is definitely not metaphorical, right? It's a reality. It's just imagine how big the spiritual world is. Actually, you can't imagine it. It's unfathomable. It's just like so let's see, what is that? So this is a picture from that new telescope, the James Webb telescope. What this square here is, that's a blown up version of just one little very, very small dot, right? So this is, looking into the universe a bit. Let me share that now. If you were to extend, your arm and have a little pin, right, just like a pin that you might use for sewing at the end of your finger, right? So these pictures from the James Webb telescope, that's how much of the entire sky you're seeing with that you're just seeing one little pin. One little pin. And anyone know how long it would take if you would go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, like that? How long it would take you to count up to 1 billion? Anyone know? It would take over 30 years. That's how big the billion number is. So, and 1,000 billion make a trillion. And the closest galaxy to us, the closest one. So a light year is 5.8 trillion miles. And the closest galaxy is 5.8 trillion times 2.5 million. That's the closest galaxy. And this is just one pin of the entire sky. And this is one of the smaller universes. And Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur says that, if I could find the quote, oh, I know where the quote is. That Krishna is the highest of all living entities. By his inconceivable power, he can at will create numberless universes. So it's just, I don't know what it comes after trillions. It's just inconceivable how vast this universe is. And this is like a mustard seed amongst a whole bag of mustard seeds. And then the material world is only at best 1/4 the size of the spiritual world is 3/4. So if you hear that Nanda Maharaj has 900,000 cows, it's not that hard to understand when you think about how vast this universe is. Right? It's incredible. It's incredible. We have no idea how big this one universe is. I mean, if you Google, even how many stars in the, just in the Milky Way, which is just one galaxy, there's 100,000 million. Wait, that's the Milky Way alone. And how many stars in the universe? Don't even try to figure out. It's 10 to the 12th power for our galaxy. So maybe 10 to the 24th power if you're a mathematician. And that's just one universe, one mustard seed in a huge bag of mustard seeds. So when we hear about Krishna playing his flute, lifting Govardhan Hill, dancing with the gopis, it's that Krishna who, through a planetary portion of his universes, come out of the skin holes of Mahavishnu. But we're so fortunate because Krishna is the source of that, and he's this lovely young boy, sweet baby Krishna. So, pretty amazing. This new telescope is really, really revealing more, but just tidbits of the universe. But still, if you see the pictures, they're just amazing. The different designs and things. And almost every one of those stars, over 50, this is what their speculation is, that for every one of those 10 to the 24th power stars, there's generally at least one planet, if not many, in its orbit. So, wow. Okay, anything else on the fallen yogi? Okay, last 2 verses of this chapter. Oops, 1 second. Get it on my computer. Tapas vibho diko yogi jnani pyo pi matodika karmi bhyas chadiko yogi tasmad yogi vavarjuna. A yogi is greater than the ascetic, greater than the empiricist, which is a jnani. The ascetic is a tapasvi, greater than the fruitive worker, the karmi. Therefore, O Arjuna, in all respects, be a yogi. Prabhupada says, he compares the three. Asceticism without self-knowledge is imperfect. Empirical knowledge without surrender to the Supreme Lord is also imperfect. And fruitive work without Krishna consciousness is just a waste of time. So the yogi, that's the best. Now, what about the yogis? Yoginam api sarvesham madkaten antaratmana shadavan bhajate yomam sameyuktatamo mataha. And of all yogis, the one who, with great faith, who always abides in me, thinks of me within himself, and renders transcendental loving service to me, he is the most intimately united with me in yoga and is the highest of all. So in the purport, Prabhupada says, the culmination of all kinds of yoga practices lies in bhakti yoga. All other yogas are but means to come to the point of bhakti and bhakti yoga. Yoga actually means bhakti yoga. All of the yogas are progressions towards the destination of bhakti yoga. Now, if you tell some people that, they would not like to hear that. How can you guys say that, bhakti yoga is the actual yoga? What about all these other yogas? But Prabhupada is boldly saying yes, because everything ultimately comes down to love. From the beginning of karma yoga to the end of bhakti yoga is a long way to self-realization. Karma yoga without fruitive results is the beginning of this path. We heard that, right? Like Nishkam karma. When karma yoga increases in knowledge and renunciation, the stage is called jnana yoga. When jnana yoga increases in meditation on the super soul by different physical processes, the mind is on him, it is called Ashtanga yoga. And once one surpasses Ashtanga yoga and comes to the point of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, it is called Bhakti yoga, the culmination. Actually, Bhakti yoga is the ultimate goal, but to analyze Bhakti yoga minutely, one has to understand these other yogas. So that is, Prabhupada would say that this verse sets the scene for the next 6 chapters, which talk about bhakti. And he thought this was a very, very important verse. It's almost like a culmination or the conclusion of all the chapters we've studied up till now. Yoginam api sarvesham. Questions, comments, thoughts? Okay. Navadip Mataji, did you set a date for the exam?
Yes, Prabhu, we are planning to take the exam on September 3rd, which is a Saturday.
Right.
So we have approximately 4 weeks to study.
All right, so I will do an overview next week.
Okay.
Okay, of the 6 chapters.
And it would also be nice if you could share with us what to expect and anticipate in terms of questions, because this is much more philosophy than NOD and NOI. So
Okay.
how should we prepare ourselves for the exam would be also good for us to.
I can work on that. Let me put that in my calendar right now. Let me just write it down. Okay, I'll do that. All right, so we can end early this week. We only had 14 verses to cover. But we will see you next week with an overview of the chapter.
Okay, thank you so much, Prabhu. Thank
Hare
you.
Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you.
Hare Krishna. So devotees, I have requested Prabhu to do a review of chapters 1 to 6. I had actually requested him to do it today, but he's not prepared. So he said he will do it next Saturday and also cover how we should approach studying the Bhagavad Gita to prepare ourselves for the exam. So please do not miss next Saturday's session, because that will be very important for us. And then the following Saturday, we will begin chapter 7. So I hope that is okay, because I thought it would be beneficial for us to get the bigger picture of the 6 chapters, because we have quite a lot of chapters.
Will there be a break, Mataji, after that next week? For next 3 weeks, will be a break?
No. There will be no break. You just have time to study. We're not going to give a break. Maybe the week before I will request Prabhu for a break, but there will be no breaks.
Okay. Fine.
Okay, thank you very much. Mancha Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Ananta Koti Vaishnav ki Jai. Jagat Guru Srila Prabhupada ki Jai.
Thank you, Mataji.
Have a blessed day.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Thank you so much, Mataji.
Thank you.
Dandavat pranam to all Prabhujis and all Matajis.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.